Alright guys, so first thing we're going to talk about is basically just building a good prone position. When I get into the prone, I like to start kind of in like a push-up. Just lower myself down onto the gun. Make sure I get that good contact in my shoulder pocket, you know, with that rifle stock. Another important thing that I see when I'm teaching new students out at the range is their elbows, right? You want to make sure your elbows are perpendicular to the rifle, as well as making sure that both your legs are flat, about shoulder width apart, and spread out behind you to absorb that recoil. Super important that your heels are flat as well. When we talk about, you know, maybe like a real world situation, you don't want to get shot in your fucking heel. It's going to be kind of one of the high points. Another important part to think about is making sure that that rifle, basically a straight line from the tip of the gun, the muzzle, goes straight through your body, right through kind of your center line. With your center of gravity, right, it's super important. I see this as well in a lot of new shooters. They're really heavy on their elbows. Your center of gravity, it's kind of more back in your hips, right, or your waist, your core. You never want to be, you know, pressuring into your elbows, right? You want to be relaxed. You want to have good bone support, right? And you want to have that muscular relaxation when we talk about, you know, elements of building a good shooting position. Another element that you'll need is getting a good natural point of aim. So all you got to do to get a good natural point of aim, line your sights up on your target, close your eyes, take a couple deep breaths. When you open your eyes, if your sights are still on your target, it means you've achieved that good natural point of aim. So now that we have our stance and our foundation figured out, we'll go into grip. So when I'm shooting long gun, me personally, I like to touch as little of that gun as possible. I let my thumb kind of rest right on my hand. Let my finger do kind of all the work. I don't like to wrap my thumb around the pistol grip because I feel like the more I touch that gun or the more I kind of interfere with that gun, the more errors that can occur. Once you have your good grip though, we'll talk about trigger control. So you can see kind of in this little drawing, 90 degrees of trigger control. You don't want to wrap your finger around kind of in like a J hook, right? You want it to be 90 degrees of trigger control. You can see my index finger, right? That first pad, that trigger is going to be right in the center of that first pad. I kind of want to isolate my rear knuckle, rear kind of portion of that finger, and just let the tip of my finger do all the work, like you guys can see right here. Now back to my grip, mainly my thumb placement. I like to keep it tight to my hand, but you guys can literally put it wherever you want, up high, off to the side, and just don't recommend wrapping it around. Make sure you can get that 90 degrees of trigger control. Now, with the trigger control, 3 kind of common errors that I see new shooters make. Flinching is the number one, right? That's when you kind of anticipate the shot. Bucking, you're basically just tensing up, maybe even closing your eyes if you're a really, really new shooter. And then jerking, you're kind of forcing that shot off. Basically, you have 2 different types of trigger control, interrupted and uninterrupted. Uninterrupted is going to be kind of the most preferred and most ideal method. That's your like slow, steady squeeze that you hear whenever you go shoot at the range. Interrupted is going to be kind of for more windy conditions. Maybe your target's fucking running, or you got to get that shot off right now, so you almost have to force that shot off. That's going to be your interrupted trigger control. Really quick, we're going to talk about setting up our cheek piece. So when I set mine up, I like to raise it to the highest length, and then I just slowly put my face on the gun, lowering it until I see that full field of view, that crisp sight picture without any scope shadow or anything inside mine. Now, this part is called your Diopter Focus Ring. When we set up our Diopter Focus Ring, couple things we need to do first, right? You can either do it by yourself or you can do it with a buddy. Get a piece of white printer paper or like a white wall. You want to zoom your scope all the way in to, you know, anywhere between 15 to 20 power, whatever your highest setting is you have. And then you want to get onto the gun, look through your scope, and adjust your dioptic focus until your reticle, the numbers on your reticle or the lines are super crisp and clear. With this, I draw a little line, so then if it gets bumped or something in the case, I can always just turn it back to that line. And here's kind of an example of me doing it in real time. You can see that reticle is really blurry, and as I adjust it, those numbers and those lines get more crisp. And I want to find, you know, that point of where it's the most crisp for my eye. Everyone's eye is going to be kind of different, right? So next we'll kind of glance over a couple parts of a scope. This is a top view down of a scope. Plain and simple, right? The things that you'll kind of need to know right off the bat. You have 2 lenses, objective lens, ocular lens. You have 2 turrets, your elevation and your windage that you'll apply your data to. And then you have your parallax focus knob, as well as your magnification ring and your diopter focus ring. You also have your scope tube, and some scopes also have what's called an illuminated reticle on-off switch or on-off dial. Now, next thing we'll talk about is scope shadow, right? So scope shadow is a really common error that I see every time we're out at the range. I'm teaching new students or old students. You know, it happens to everyone. Basically, all it is you getting behind your scope and you're kind of off rather than center behind your scope. Depending on what side you see your scope shadow, all that's going to do is basically your round's going to impact in the opposite direction of the scope shadow. So you can have scope shadow up, down, left or right. You can have scope shadow perfectly all around the ring. If you have it all around the ring, like you'll see right here, you can actually shoot like normal. But a good kind of rule of thumb to minimize scope shadow, kind of be on like a medium to low power and get your face behind the fucking gun. Right here you can see we're kind of moving our heads around, showing you scope shadow in different areas. There it is. Basically all around. You could actually shoot if it's equal all around, as well as getting your face too close. This is how you get scope bit, and you get to go to the hospital and get stitches. So now we'll kind of zoom it in, right? So as I zoom that scope in, you can see the reticle's getting bigger, right? But the problem with that, the finer I move my head, right, the quicker and easier it's going to be to get that scope shadow. So that's why we want to kind of run it on that medium to low power. Just because I have 25 power scope or a 30 power scope doesn't mean I have to use my entire amount of magnification, right? Lower power, you can get a bigger field of view, see the bigger area of your where your target's at and everything like that. Another common error I see with new shooters out at the long range is not getting good eye relief or getting the proper eye relief, especially for your optic, right, that you're shooting. So all your eye relief is that appropriate distance away from, you know, the ocular lens to your eye. Usually it's anywhere between 3 to 3.6 inches, depending on your optic. It should be able to tell you on the box, right? And when you're setting up your scope, it's important. Build your solid position behind your gun and then get your good eye relief. Last thing we're going to talk about is your natural respiratory pause. And along with that, your breathing, right? So all we need to do when we get into long range shooting is learn how to control how we breathe, right? So here's kind of a little visual I drew up, right? Breathing in, out, hold, bang, right? That's when you're going to shoot. You never want to hold your breath when you're shooting, right? Because that's just going to cause you to get fatigued over time. You're going to fucking slap your shots. That's when, you know, all those trigger control errors come into play and everything like that. So thanks for watching today, guys. Hope you learned something. Gonna be cranking these videos out probably once a week. First time on YouTube, so they're probably gonna be pretty rough at start, but bear with me. And yeah, appreciate it. Hit that like and subscribe button.